Like, I kind of like the idea of when there's a hinder in play, like that's kind of a free play.
You just gotta have a ref that yells "play on."
If people can watch football, they can watch. They can watch roundnet because it's 100 times less complicated. Kind of pro club potential with sponsorship brand deals, pro club matchups, and kind of what is the future? Would that look like? And is there a future with it?
It would be interesting though to see. It's almost like.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Rally Podcast. 2 in 2 weeks. I say we're kind of crushing it. We could just quit now and make it a 30-second podcast and say we did it. But anyway, I'm Mike White here with Logan, Cornelius, and Shaun Boyer. We got some cool topics to talk about today. A bunch of little ones we'll probably just jump through and give you some stuff to think about. The one I'm going to start off with, which I think is an interesting, more logistic one, is... there was already talks about this mid-season as events got canceled, but the Premier Division, it's a time-sensitive thing. It expires after a year. So, truthfully, no one's Premier right now, right? Or everyone's expired. There's no Premier players in the U.S. I'm just kidding. We've extended it. But the question is there are a lot of new players that are good. And truthfully, there are also maybe a lot of players that aren't as good. And kind of thought about what should we do for 2021? Should we do more spots, less spots, get rid of it, do something new? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, my initial thought, I can't say I thought on this too deeply, but I know my initial thought is, I don't know, just keep it the same, but it'll all even out. Like the people who deserve to be pro will float to the top of Premier. They'll float to the top of Premier and they'll gain. And those who are in Premier that don't need to be Premier anymore, either they won't play or they won't be able to requalify. I mean, I would be fine with making requalification harder. But as far as qualification goes, like I'm fine with keeping qualification the same.
The same as in a top 3 or a top 4.
I think it was top 2 actually. So top 2 in advanced game Premier status, and so I'm much more in favor of that than like just scrapping the whole Premier system. And just like starting from scratch and letting people requalify again. I don't love that.
Mm-hmm. It would be interesting though to see. It's almost like I guess you wonder like why we would do it. It would be a way to sort of flush out anyone who has the status that may not still deserve it. But I don't think there's a whole lot of those people. But it would be kind of fun to just clean slate, everyone make a run for it. It's a really big deal earning in that tournaments going into or whenever we kick back up. But the other X factor here is we don't even know. We're not even sure when our next tournament is going to be officially.
Yeah, it's different when you're like a few months out or even 1 year. But if we start to get a year and a half, 2 years, like I'll tell you, like I wasn't Premier, but probably could have played a couple and get it. And currently, I should not be Premier. Like I totally would understand it, and it would be weird. But that kind of gets into it with Shaun when you say deserve to be Premier, because I think when we announced some more Premier spots, kind of mid-season, we weren't sure if we'd have tournaments. Something I think it was Ian Timon brought up about a lot of people in Premier shouldn't be Premier, and I kind of was saying that Premier is kind of a concept. You can have an idea of like how good a Premier player should be, but truthfully, we set the qualifications, and if a person meets that qualifications, like Logan said, then they like are in Premier, and it's like that's technically a Premier player, right? You could say like, no, they're not really. It's like, well, they are Premier players, and I think you can get kind of nitty gritty about that, but what it comes down to is, are you happy with what that is, right? Like if we think that there are like 40 players that are qualified for Premier that we personally wouldn't deem Premier level, then you make tighter qualifications or different qualifications. But I think as of now, I think one proposal was like maybe opening more spots in the beginning of the season, which I think could happen. Maybe you do kind of a census of where you think the people are. But that also comes down to like, do we just want more players in there? Make technically Premier qualified like a little lower of a barrier of entry, and kind of what consequences come with that, because there may not be many. It may make Premier divisions bigger, which may be frustrating for some if they want a different day, or it gets to the original idea why Premier was there, which is to have quality games. But it's kind of really interesting because we can essentially, Premier is very controllable.
Yeah.
It is, but I think it's like in the question you're asking, which is what do we want Premier to be or represent? And I think in some ways it is like a status symbol within the community. It's like an achievement you can obtain. But at its core, I think its function is to have the best players playing against the best players at the day of a tournament. And so if we make it too loose, then that division, I think the spectrum of ability is too wide and they're not getting that quality play. But you don't want it to be so hard to reach that only the same 50 players are getting it every season.
Yeah, I think, I mean, this is different than the original question asked, but like the issue with premieres, I think it's far easier to re-qualify than it is to qualify. So generally you start getting that bottom layer that's not as good. It's the people who are able to re-qualify pretty easily, and something that's reminiscent and like, I mean, it's if you know the right people, you have the right friend, you can get there, you can re-qualify, you can make pro division if you know the right people.
So you're saying be popular, suck up to people, you'll be Premier in no time.
Exactly. But then re-qualifying is a lot easier. So for me, being like, hey, let's open up more spots for Premier at the beginning of the season. It's like, well, if we're saying there's too many people in Premier anyways, like let's just keep it the same. In fact, let's tighten up what it takes to re-qualify. And this is just like, then the people who don't need to be in there, like they'll lose their qualification pretty quickly. They're not going to re-qualify. It's going to be hard for them. But I mean, if you open up to top 4, like, hey, top 8 advance make Premier, you're going to get some people that aren't quite at that Premier level yet. So for me, that's why I'm kind of like, hey, let's keep it the same. Like if we think there's people in Premier that shouldn't be, let's tighten up that re-qualification, and then those people aren't going to re-qualify. Into season, they won't be Premier anymore, and then we're only bringing in quality people. So,
I do think going into the future, getting the good people in, I think the good people will get in, right? They may have to go to a couple, right? Hilltop will be at the first tournament, and they'll just re-qualify like right away. And then so you got to go to the next one, but also there's a top 3 spot. It's not or top 2 or top 3 depending on what it is.
Yeah,
it's not just the winners.
Top 2. Yeah.
So I think you're onto it that the bigger issue with this long time break is of the ex-Premier players, how many are still at that level? I think that is really the core of it. But truthfully, if it depends on how many we want. Say there's 200 Premier players and 50 of them are really kind of dropped, right? And they don't re-qualify. Well, then we could end the season with way less than we want. Do you know what I mean? Right? Like, so maybe, not that it would happen, but if we were to have more people kind of dwindle out of Premier, it may make sense to add more in depending on kind of the number you want. If we think 150 Premier players is too low, then and we expect kind of that to drop, or we kind of just have to deal with it.
There also needs to be an understanding that like coming out of this really unprecedented break, there's going to be some growing pains and some weird situations and players unhappy with their position and needing to requalify or to get to a point where they're on the right space they need to be. But it's just one of those things. It's like we can only do so much before we're back to normal.
Yeah, and you got to give people something to post on the Facebook page. Otherwise, it'll be boring. So,
yeah, some people live for this stuff.
But yeah, like I think one interesting point. I don't think it's necessarily you're saying, but one thing that would be interesting is like, hey, there's only a finite set of Premier spots. So it's like, hey, we only have 150 Premier spots. So like, it could be like if we were to do it that way, and this is totally like just thinking on the spot.
Definitely not what I was saying, but I understand.
I know it's not, but I was like, oh dang, what if we did it this way? There's only 150 Premier spots. We start getting near that cap. That means that like, oh shoot, like even if you haven't been there a year, maybe whoever is like the furthest away from qualifying, they automatically get dropped. And then that's one way where it's like, hey, there's always only going to be 150 Premier players, so it's a big deal. That would be, that's a little bit more extreme, but that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Kind of like that.
We just gotta
Would
find
be
our
fun.
sweet spot. I'll go to one tournament
Yeah.
a year to properly requalify, and then just hide in the shadows.
Unless there's, I guess, yeah.
Unless there's
The
stipulation,
intake,
right? Yeah.
yeah, the intake would be slower. So like you'd have an idea, like, okay, I need to play a tournament before I become the bottom of the chopping block and I could get cut. But
Yeah.
it would be interesting.
You just gotta check your gas. If you're getting close to empty, you just play a quick tournament, fill it up again. But no, I like that because I think that gets it. Like, well, that would be cool. I really don't know logistically how that would work, but it kind of just the idea of like, which we don't need to talk about today because I have not thought about it much. But like, is there an ideal amount of premier players? Right? Do we want each region to have 32 so they could reliably field 8 teams? Or something like that.
Or it could be like, hey, we take the tournament attendance. We take a percentage of the tournament attendance. Like every year, Premier is 5% of total tournament attendance. So that means like, hey, tournament attendance in 2019 was 1,000 people. So 5% of that would be what, 50? So there's 50 Premier spots. Clearly, that's not what it is. But like, and then next year, tournament attendance, you take a percentage of that. So that way, Premier is it's variable. But it's still consistent based on the amount of people playing.
That kind of makes sense to me because it's kind of essentially like, are you in the top 10% of players? That is Premier.
Yeah.
Top 5%.
You might want to call Nor and Jack, tell them we saw Premier.
I'm going to add them to the call.
But I thought you were going to start going like electoral college route, Logan, and be like, based on your region's participation, you will get this many Premier slots allocated.
California gets 100 Premier players. If you're in Vermont, you can't. A whole team can't. You just get one. You or your partner have to decide.
I'll just sleep on that one a little bit more.
Nice.
Yeah, we figured that one out. You can check that off the checklist.
We solved it. All right, let's see if we can solve this next one. Next one. Similar round net stipulation rules kind of stuff. Refs versus observers. We've seen a handful of discussions in the Facebook group and elsewhere about this. Because right now in RoundNet, it's an observer-based system where if you have a question about a call, you ask the observer and they give it to you. Do you think there's a point in which RoundNet will go to refs and kind of how it would change? I have some of my own kind of questions around it and why I think it either would or wouldn't work. I'm curious what you guys kind of think in the future.
I feel like the answer will from every person.
All right, don't think about logistics first. Let's go non-logistical first.
Yeah, I'm not thinking logistics. I'm just saying I feel like every person's answer will kind of be based on their sports background. So like, from my understanding, like there's very much an observer system like Ultimate. And I could be wrong about that, but that's my understanding. But for me, like I don't like basketball, football, like having refs. Like I like the ref idea. I think it makes sense. Like I don't want the burden to be on me to be like, is this a call? Like, did I carry it? Did I not carry it? I don't think I did, but what if I kind of think I did? And then like I would rather just someone tell me like, hey, you did this. Like that's wrong. Like I don't like that the call weight is on the players. Like I think it's much easier for that to be on like the ref and like to see those calls. And a lot of times people don't see anything. And there's some, like if it's a call where you have to defer to observers, it's just, the players have to initiate that. I like the idea of refs. I'm for it.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about any other mainstream big sport, they don't have anything similar to an observer, at least not that I can come up with. And I think we will definitely down the road need something more towards a ref than observer, because it's extreme, but let's say we have the spike bowl equivalent of the Super Bowl. We're not going to let that ride on a team's biased opinion of what just happened in a play. We're going to need some kind of ref that can make that call.
And so I got another thing on that, but first, kind of with what Logan was saying is, I think the issue does become like that burden, and I think I remember when first kind of was implementing or we're using the lean-in rule where you can't lean over 6 feet, and it's very frustrating that like I would want to get ready for like to go set the ball, but I was like thinking of like having to watch them or you like can't really see. And it was frustrating that kind of the burden was on the person to make that call. And similarly with like some double touches or some other things like that, where I want the observer there to make those active calls because I don't want to have to worry about them. And I really totally understood that. Like, which calls should you not be like, I don't know about? But the other thing I was thinking about is I don't know how many rules in roundnet right now are that easy to call quickly, right? Refs for a lot of things, I think can make sense, but like, and I'm also worried about the speed of the call. Like, can a ref call a pocket as like that quick? You know, like how many little things are there that are just hard to notice and hard to see that, and separately, that the players have actually a better view than the refs. Like you'll have like a big call and it could be a rim, but can we get to a point where refs can call a rim in half a second? Can they just go rim and like that's it, right? I foresee situations where players are like, no, that's wrong, or even when refs kind of feel that way because they kind of feel that pressure to make calls like quickly.
Oh, I think in every sport, there's going to be disagreements between players and refs, whether they like it or not. So that's one thing. The other thing, too, is you saying let's not worry about logistics. In this magical world, we have slow-mo replay that we can go reference and really determine. We have a virtual assistant referee that can, make those calls. But I do think if we were to put a lot of time into the qualification of someone like an observer or a ref and maybe tighten that up, we could have faith in those types of calls that do happen fast. I mean, you see in other sports where I'm impressed with how accurate the refs can make a call in a split-second decision on like a football field. So I think we're just still young. Like in a lot of aspects of the sport, this is one of them.
I think something else, just thinking in my head, like it sounds exhausting to call like to call pocket or rim every time, but the truth of it, most aren't that close where you could think, right? There are a few, but in general, right, if you don't say anything if it's clean, but calling rim, I'm thinking more about serving because, right, that happens every play. So what's the refereeing around serving? Like a clear rim is an easy rim. A clear pocket's a clear pocket. You know, I guess you don't call pocket because they can choose to play it in our current rule set. And same with rim. Same with rim. So how do you even call that? That's the whole thing. But I think
there are no active calls.
It gets harder with like the hard calls, but you're right that like that will just be a part of the sport.
Yeah, and I mean part of how like what you said is like calling it instinctively. Like how many times have you played and like you call a rim and you're like, shoot, I wanted to play that, or you call a pocket and like, oh, I wanted to play that, like on serve. So like I think the ref would instinctively know that quickly. And like for me, I'm kind of thinking too, like maybe it's more of like I like in my mind, I like see it with flags. He's got like a red flag. So like whenever something bad happens, the red flag's raised. So like on a serve, it hits rim, bad. But if the receiving team wants to play it, they don't have to yell anything, but they can. They would like see the flag. They'd be able to play through it. Or like if it was a hinder, like they hold up the flag. They see it's a hinder, and they can choose to play through it, or they can basically stop play if not. And so, so like there can be some where it's like if it's something, an infraction happens where it has to stop play, the ref can come in. If it's something that can be possibly played through, there's some kind of visual indicator the ref can signal to like, hey, you have the like. I mean, like in soccer, like you can play through it if you want. But you don't have to.
I think that if this ever happens, right, more a ref-based system, I think there would be a interesting learning curve between the players and the refs because, right, I think right, players often, right, the reason we go to observers is because teams disagree, right, and they don't know what they see. And I think although there are wrong, I think a lot of times, right, like people are going to disagree, but you may get refs getting yelled at because the ref calls rim right away and they think it's good. And it's just kind of like giving the ref that power is good. But like I don't want to say it's like too much power, but like right now it's like, okay, just use the observers if you like need them. For the most part, you all agree. When you make the ref decide every decision, I'm curious about like how much of that margin of error is there. You know, like if a ref has to call 30 different close calls a game as opposed to 3, are they way more likely to get it wrong? Are we going to go like, wow, reffing this sport is really hard. We're consistently having like calls that maybe looking back weren't as good.
I guess the difference is like, and one, it partly will depend on, I think just like in other sports, the ref will have like regional biases on what they call and whatnot. Like everyone, you study the ref, you know what they're more willing to call, you know what to be more careful of. But like if with the observer system now, it's like, hey, the underlying like the thing we're trying to get right is like, hey, right and wrong is determined between us as players. So it's like if we're both playing a lip the whole time and we see that as good, like that's what we're going to call as good. So right now, like the standard of what is legal and what is not is determined by the teams. Mm-hmm. If we want to try to create a more like steady system of what is wrong and right, that's where a ref would come in. Because like right now it's like, yeah, like an observer may only make 3 calls, but 2 teams could be playing lips as good for the entire game.
Right.
A ref would come in and be like, and it would be completely different because it'd be setting a different standard. So I guess that's the question: is do we want the standard to be determined per game, per players, or do we want kind of a set standard that's more universal between these group of officials, where there may be some variances between like how they've played and their type of game, but will be more standardized than between players?
Yeah, that's a great point, Logan. I also think too, to your point, Mike, I don't think if we started using refs tomorrow, they would be used a lot more than like an observer today. I think they would only come in and make those close calls on the close plays where probably players would want to observers anyways.
Right. The ones where they have to, where it's called like making a call, right? You can call rims and pockets all day when they're easy. But the close ones probably would have gone to observers, that's what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think maybe I'm optimistic, but I don't think it would slow down the game too much more than we are with observers.
And actually, what that made me think of is, so say in a normal game with observers, they'd go 3 times, right? And with refs, there are like 8 close calls, but on those 5 that didn't go to observers, both teams maybe would have been unsure. Because, right, we're talking about the burden earlier. Nothing's more stressful than like getting it up on a serve and being like, was that a rim? I don't know. What should I do? So like, and then you play it, right? But in a perfect world, the ref goes rim and you're like, oh, cool. So I think like, so we'll actually maybe go to the ref more as an expression, but truthfully, that's because there is this risk-reward system between going to observers and making a call currently. There's making calls is a risky business.
I did really like the idea of like the ref holding up a red flag, because then it cues the players. It's almost like when you get a free play in football because the defense had offside. Yeah, you can you like now know like, all right, it's not necessarily a free play, but we have the option.
So that was actually something brought up before, technically, just thinking about this. Like, I forget when it was brought up, but it's like, we talked about the act of this free play. You know, like, we let people play on pockets and rims. And I think there was a discussion a couple of years ago that was shot down, but was about, like, do we even let that happen? So that's a whole kind of another thing where it's like, the only issue we have with that is because we allow these kind of play-ons, and we're thinking about this rule, but there's a world where we don't do these play-ons.
See, now that we're saying this, imagine like I kind of like the idea of like, hey, when there's a hinder in play, like that's kind of a free play. Like you can play that out in the end. Like I kind of like that. It's like, hey, yeah, like you can try to play it out and finish it. You don't have to like sacrifice it, but in the end, like
that's what was brought up. No matter what, that was brought up. It's like you don't have to play through.
I like that.
It's like a free play. It's like if you fail to get it back to the net, like maybe if you hit it back on the net, you have to live with your hit. Maybe.
Yeah.
But it's like if you don't get it back, it's still a redo or something.
I don't know. Maybe it's not like I'm fine with like at the end, like if you don't score the point, you can redo it because they hindered you. Like if they're, I don't know.
It's on the other team. So the team that did the hindering has to win the point. If they don't win that point, then it's or whatever it is. Like, yeah.
Right. The team that was hindered, if they don't win the point, it's a redo.
Yes. So the other team has to do their best to stop it and to force a redo. Right? Yeah. The other team has to force a redo. Huh.
I like it. That's a good rule. I don't know who shot that down, but
all right, let's Jack Nor get in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But check that one on the whole game on this call.
But that is a cool one.
I really like that. I really like that idea.
I do. I guess devil's advocate would be like it does complicate from a viewing standpoint.
You just got to have a ref that yells "play on," and then everyone knows what's going on.
I know it's complicated from a viewing standpoint, but there's so many sports that are complicated from a viewing standpoint that it's like, like if people can watch football, they can watch roundnet because it's 100 times less complicated.
Yeah.
So.
But I get what you're saying.
Just playing devil's advocate.
But I think going into this call, I was thinking I was going to be anti-ref, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. Because what really bothers me is the burden on the players of having to self-officiate. It is exhausting, and it's truthfully not fun when you disagree, right? I'll disagree with a ref all day, right? Like, not being angry with them, but like, right? But like, if the ref makes a call and it's wrong, I'm like, okay, whatever, right? They're wrong. Disagreeing with a player, like, it doesn't feel good. Because, like, I'm not trying to steal the point from them. I just have a different opinion. And I don't want to, like, right? When you both disagree, you just do a redo. That's what it is. But you just feel like kind of a jerk. Like, hey, I think you're wrong. But with a ref, it's like, all right, they're wrong. But, like, whatever. That's a ref, The ref doesn't have a stake in the game. That's a different thing.
Exactly. And if you remember, like, pre-observer days, sometimes these calls would be debated for 10, 15 minutes and it would hold up, like, the whole tournament.
Yeah.
And because just these teams couldn't agree. So, like, we need something.
Yeah. We just need good refs.
All four refs.
But it is funny. I just also think from like a viewing perspective, like I think some sort of signals will be good too, because I feel like it'd be annoying to like just hear calls constantly throughout the entire game. Rim, pocket, no good, all that stuff. But
all right. So Gasaway's the one who threw this out. Kind of pro club potential with sponsorship brand deals, pro club matchups, and kind of what is the future, would that look like, and is there a future with it? And that's something that I've talked with like Brian a lot, and like as we develop like Lone Star within Texas, and for us, like we like pay the Lone Star players, and we're kind of working the future, like, hey, like do kind of like a revenue share with Lone Star as Taser grows, Lone Star gets more money. So like we really want to build up the idea of like pro club and players and this affiliation and try to build sponsorship and brand identity with that. And like one thing we really want to try to do is like squad matchups. And so we're trying to do that with Supreme. It's something we're trying to get them on board to do. Been some complications, haven't been able to make it work, but we're hoping to make it work. But otherwise, like we want to see more of like these 5v5 like club matchups, or like it's a group of players, and it's kind of the idea of like the regional clubs and whatnot, but like basically a group of players who come together, they're all high performing, and they play in the squad matchup against others. And so I think for me, I think it would be a lot of fun, like watching some sort of like small league or even test league where like people do that. And there's like 5 teams and we do that. And just the idea of like a squad matchup in pros. And I think it's a lot easier to get behind like a brand and a team and an identity when they come together and they're under this one roof. And I think just like sponsorship and watching, and I think there's a lot of potential with that. And I think regionally, like you can get behind like, hey, these are the players like you're looking up to, and these are the players like you want to compete as. And like it kind of helps, like in Texas, it helps kind of like we have these people, like these are the top players. So everyone who's competing for that, they can kind of see to that. They're highlighted more. I really like the idea of pro club. I think it's super early, and I know like even within like roundnet history, there's been clubs somewhat on and off, and nothing's really stayed together. I think Origin obviously is final. like they've had some structure around theirs. We've had some structure around ours.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the only two kind of clubs that have had structure around it. But I would love to see more forming and competing.
Well, that's kind of what I wanted to bring up real quick, like the history of it. Like clubs are at like their weird peak in like 2015, 2016. Like Origin came first, and then there was Spicy, there was Atlas. I'm missing some other good ones too, but like there were
Fear of the West.
Fear of the West. Was that a club or a T-shirt?
Lone Star was there.
And Lone Star. But so there were so many like kind of what was the Coaster Kids? Remember that?
Coaster Kids.
But so there were a lot of clubs forming, and Jack Scotty actually made a site back then called Roundnet Clubs and was taking in the rankings and all that. But and I think it brought some fun rivalries. It brought some fun stuff. Truthfully, we're in a golden age of social media with the Roundnet accounts. And I think we see that a lot today. People have their like geographic groups. But there was something really special about that time where people were forming groups and kind of training with them and just being part of an identity. And I think it helps people like root for them. Not just two people. There's 10, and we care about all of them. And I think that I'm totally behind Logan. Like I was very excited when I saw what you guys were doing, because I'm like, that's something that people have been talking about for like 5 years now, like a club tournament that has never happened. Yeah.
And I was pumped for it. So I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty disappointed when we had to post. Hopefully it's a postponement, not a cancel. Like we want to make it happen, but I'm gonna believe it's a postponement. I hope we can make it happen with them, but I want to see it happen.
I just imagine like the NSL national. Well, I guess NRL, National Roundnet League, and it would have all these sort of conferences, divisions, standings. You play it. I mean, the potential is awesome, and I do like. I think there's so much more ability to get sponsorships, to get bigger, to have the brand value when you're an organization compared to a team.
And it can really just be a natural extension of geographical area, right? Like Lone Star, right? And Origin's Chicago-based. Lone Star is Texas-based. You could have right? There is the Golden Gate Roundnet Club, Shaun, in San Francisco, right? But they kind of don't really they present themselves more as a group than like a club. But you could have both. I think that's because mixes.
But I think that if club series or tournaments or matches started happening, that would incentivize and sort of trigger these little groups becoming more formalized and wanting to participate as an entity.
Well, there's also that reminded me there was also Legacy Roundnet Club up there. Some of those guys, those NorCal guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of potential with it, and it's kind of part of it too is I find that it's very hard to get people to try to participate in a different format than like the pool play bracket format. Like that's what people are used to. It's like getting the guys to be like, hey, like let's do this. Like Lone Star was all on board and like to go against Supreme, and part of that is just like we want to take on the Southeast. Like Texas always kind of felt like abandoned from the Southeast.
Having to drive 12 hours to regionals, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like Texas is, in the Southeast region, but not Southeast and not included all that. So part of it is just like, we've always been on this island. And so it's like, hey, like we want to go head to head with people and compete. And so like that got them motivated, but it's like, I can't just throw out any 5-team club to get them motivated to want to go out. So it's like finding a way to like motivate these players to buy into a new system and buy into like, hey, this is what this could be. And so that's what we really want to do is like, we want to test it with like pay-per-view or something like, hey, would people pay to watch like this kind of club match where it's like these high level games all across and there's a winner from it? Because eventually I'd love to try to form like a four club league where it's like you just play each club once or twice and just test it out, just like I did with kind of like I did a college league back in like 2015. And that was kind of like a precursor. And then
the National Collegiate Roundnet League.
Yeah, NCRL, baby. And so just want to test it out and try to make something happen with clubs. And I think it'd be a fun, like, new facet to the sport.
Logan, correct me. Was Texas A&M the first official Roundnet club? Formed in 2012?
I don't think that formed in 2012, 2013. It depends if Harvard was official. I don't know if Harvard was ever an official
that's
club.
A good question.
like I know that they had a club, but I don't know if they were officially recognized on campus. If they weren't, then I think we might have been the first official recognized club.
I mean, does Harvard still? Do they have any? Action
I don't
going
think
on?
they still got anything going on. So you got legacy.
You
Your
got
extra
the
3
claim,
months gotcha.
I think someone might have re-registered the Harvard club. Actually, it might have been Tony who did it, but I don't know if he actually registered.
It might have been Tony. Yeah.
He just registered with us.
Yeah. But all right, but I like that stuff. I think it's really hard to not force it, but like weirdly, it faded out. But back in the day, clubs were like just a natural progression, right? Origin was traveling the country as this group. So we're all like, all right, we'll form a group, sure. And like other people were like, all right, they got groups. Okay, we'll do a group. And like it became this thing organically, really. And kind of just faded out because and there were talks about doing the club stuff, but it never really happened. And truthfully, Oregon was just too good, and then Atlas was too good. But anyway, but so it's hard right now where I don't see it organically happening too much outside of like regional groups, but they don't really like. You see some regional groups come together, but kind of not in the same aspect. Or part of it. It's more of like a, hey, we're all friends, as opposed to, hey, we're all part of like a specific group. Mm-hmm. But hopefully this event could give kind of the boost to push it back into the roundnet scene.
And like, look at the college scene. I think part of what's made the college scene grow so much and get the excitement around it is like, this is what's happening. People are forming clubs. They have that brand to get behind. Like they're cheering for their university, and it draws in from that already like university like mentality of like competing and getting behind your team and cheering them on. And so like that has very much propelled the college game and allowed it to grow. And so I think there is a lot of opportunity on a higher level with that and getting people to kind of get behind. And I think it's a huge part of fans and like cheering for people. And that's kind of something that's been a conversation all throughout like the development of roundnet is like, how do we get people to be fans and cheer for them? And now it's mostly dependent on like, hey, is this team winning a lot? Like if they're winning too much, like, the more Chico won, the more people cheered against them. The more just like Showalter won, the more people cheered against them. And so, but like, I think clubs and that kind of regional flavor to it, I think would help a lot of like the fandom and cheering for people and developing players.
Yeah.
And once we have an NRL, they'll start scouting the college clubs, convincing kids to leave school early so they can come play, giving them big offers.
Exactly. Hey, we're already forming that system in Texas, so I'm just waiting for everyone else to get on.
Texas is an island. Page. No one cares.
Utah will do what we're doing soon.
Yeah, that's great. All right, cool guys. Let's wrap it up there. Once again, shout out to our backseat producer Andrew Gasaway for putting some questions together and setting up a time for us. And thanks to Logan and Shaun for coming on here, hopping. Fun fact, last week, Shaun and I were sitting on the call and Logan forgot. We sat here for like 20 minutes. Just he might show up. He's probably on a different call. Didn't show up. No. So thanks for being on time.
Do not disturb. I didn't get the calendar reminder.
Oh. Yeah,
we were much more time efficient today.
Yeah, it's it's really risky to turn off your calendar notifications.
I know. I just got a lot to do,
Yeah. Okay.
But he did treat us with that beautiful face all shaved up. So
look at that.
I'm a different person.
Do you have the hair all in a bag or what?
I know. Savannah wouldn't let me frame it. I asked her if I could frame it, and she said no.
It would look really good just right above your TV there.
I know. I could put it shave it to look like my beard.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
You can take a picture of yourself now and then just glue it on.
Man, hell yeah, a lot of missed opportunities.
That's the ending everyone was hoping we'd get to.
That one's on. Honestly, though, that one's on Savannah. I tried.
Sure. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. If you're on YouTube, please give it a like, and if you're on any of the apps, give us a subscribe or a follow, and we'll try to keep these coming for you. Peace out.